Hi, this is Philip Martin, and you're tuned in to OnFilm, the video version, which we're going to continue to do as long as we continue to be under house arrest. And this is day, I don't know, I think it's day 140, 140 days, which is a lot of time. So, and I expect we'll be here for a few more weeks, and maybe we'll continue this even after we get out of the pokey. So, what do I have to tell you today? Well, it's a typical week. We're starting to get back into sort of a normal groove, and we have another film that is actually opening in a theater this week. It's also opening online on all the videos streaming services, but Summerland is actually going to be in theaters, and you can go see it. And that would be a good thing to do if you feel like you can go do it. I mean, it depends all on your own level of comfort and what you feel safe doing. The theaters that I've been to have been very diligent about observing all the protocols and wiping down things, and everything feels, kind of weirdly antiseptic, but it's what we've got to do now that we're in this situation. And if we had locked down earlier, maybe we would be like Europe coming out of it, and maybe like Europe, we would be seeing Tenet pretty soon. At least that's the word now, is that Tenet will probably open in Europe in August, and maybe that will be enough of a summer opening to appease Christopher Nolan, and maybe it will open here in December, or they'll push it back to 2021 or whatever. It's just going to be it's a very interesting situation we're in. It's a catch-22 in that the movie theaters, the chains at least, won't open until there's product available, and the product is not going to start moving until the chains are open and are, serving motion pictures to you folks. So we don't know what we're gonna have in the next couple of months. Maybe a vaccine is doable. Maybe by the end of the year. I know a friend who's in some clinical trials and asking for volunteers, so I volunteered. Karen volunteered. I don't know whether we're going to actually be accepted into the trial, and whether we'll get actual potential vaccine or actual placebo, but we're going to try to do that, and we'll see how that works. So we're all doing what we can, from Tom Hanks on down, and this is an interesting time of year in that usually this time of year is for most sports fans, they're not watching a lot of sports now because it's baseball season. And baseball season looks like it's about to be derailed. At four games in, 4 days in. I'm doing this a little earlier in the week than you're watching it. You know that, right? So I'm back earlier in the week. You people of Friday. And, I wonder if college football can actually play. I'm sure the NFL will try to play because those guys are professionals, and there's a lot of money on the line, and they just seem like they're going to go ahead and give it a shot. And okay, that's fine. Let's hope that it all works out. Baseball looks like it's falling apart, and that makes me worry about the prospects for college athletics, where you have amateurs out there putting their bodies on the line for good old alma mater and the money it can make. So I don't see how a college presidents are generally members of a very reasonable, cautious tribe. I don't see how they can, put these kids at risk, unless they've got a lot of students back on campus. If they're not back on campus, well, who knows? I don't think there'll be sports. And in the long run, how bad is it to go a year? Well, it's a lot of money, but these things will be rebuilt, and lots of us, lose a year of our life to misadventure here and there. Some of us get sick. Some of us, do stupid things and go broke. Yeah, it's like you can recover from a year. Um, I just wish we'd started earlier. You know, that's kind of what I wish. But some of you still don't want to wear your mask. All right, fine. You're not going to see me because I'm pretty much here or at the liquor store, at the grocery store. And increasingly, I'm thinking about, we were talking about going to the theater this weekend, and maybe we will. The one thing that we haven't seen that's playing is The Greatest Showman, and I've not heard great things about that Hugh Jackman musical, but who knows? Actually, there's a friend of mine who's a big advocate of it, and so maybe we'll go down and check that out. You know, that's the sort of movie that I think you need to see on a big screen if you're going to see it, and that would be a good Sunday afternoon project for us. So maybe we'll do that. What's opening this week? Well, Radioactive actually opened last week, and that was my mistake because I didn't think it opened until this week. So we're running the review this week rather than last week when we didn't have room for it. That's an increasing problem that maybe we'll address at some point, because even more than when we had 4, 5, 6, as many as 7, I think we've had as many as 10 movies actually open in theaters on a Friday before. We could generally make room for just about every review that needed to get in, and if we didn't, we had this overflow space, this unlimited overflow space of the Blood, Dirt, and Angels blog, and we would run reviews there. Now, we don't use the blog for that purpose much anymore, and in fact, right now the blog is sort of on hiatus while they figure out some technical problems that apparently are linked to it. I don't know, but it's sort of like they've asked me not to post anything, so I'm not posting anything on the blog. So this is not going to be on the blog where it would normally be if that's where you go to look for it. You're not finding it, so you don't see it, and I'm not talking to you. But so now we have only 1 or 2 maybe movies that are actually opening in theaters, but we have, Audi, you okay? Okay, Audi wants to leave. That's her signal. Okay. You can go over there. Yeah, she's still here. She's not leaving, but she's still here. But anyway, it used to be we would have a finite number of movies, 4, 5, that were moving and coming into theaters. We would endeavor to review every one of those movies before it opened, and we would print those reviews, and you could read them, and you could use them any way you want. You use them as a consumer guide, whether you want to see the movie, or just read it because you were interested in the movies and you wanted to know what our take was, blah, blah, blah. I don't think of reviews necessarily as customer service, consumer advice. It's not up or down, go see it, don't go see it, worth $5, worth $10, that sort of thing. We're just trying to look at the movies and write something interesting about them that sort of relates to life as we live it, and that seems like a kind of, maybe some people would say pretentious way to look at it, but it's the only way I could see to look at it, because it's sort of like, I don't really want to tell you what you go see or what not to go see. You go make up your own mind. This is just us weighing in and giving you our opinion of this putative work of art. Okay? But there were times when there'd be too many movies opening, or when we couldn't get advanced looks at them, and then we had to, kind of right around it, not run a review, run a wire review, which I really am not fan. I'm not a fan of running wire reviews, even though that's what most of the country does now. I think that there's a couple of reasons for it. For one thing, if we run a one-off wire review, you have no idea about this writer. You don't know about the critic's, background, what he's written before, what she's written before, how she's dealt with other movies. You see it when it pops up, and you don't have a relationship with that particular critic. Whereas if you have a local critic, somebody who writes regularly about film in this place that you go to every Friday or whenever you go to it, then you can start to calibrate your own opinions around that critic's opinions. You can like say, okay, they generally do this, they generally do that, so, and I tend to like this about it, and I tend not to like this about it. So if he likes this movie, I'm not going to like this movie. That sort of thing, you know. Whereas, and plus, in recent years, you haven't had a big choice of the Wire reviews, and you don't get to be frank, to be absolutely frank, a lot of the reviews that move on the Wire really aren't up to our standards. Now, that's not the case with the reviews from the New York Times, the LA Times, Washington Post. But some of the others that ran, well, there was one guy that we ran a lot because we didn't have anybody else to run back 5, 6, 10 years ago. And he was just terrible. And I hated running a terrible critic in our newspaper just to have a review. But expectations were such by you readers and by, you know, my bosses, that, you know, we were going to run reviews of movies that were opening if it was all possible. And it was possible, even though it was written by this guy who I didn't respect and who wasn't a good writer and he wasn't a good thinker. But we'd still run it, not prominently, but we used to internally make jokes about it. And I don't think that's a good way to do business. So we try not to run Wire reviews at all, and if we do run them, we try to run the best ones, you know. And there are some critics out there I really admire, and I'm not going to start naming them because I would forget some. And but we don't, as a rule, run Wire reviews. We will prefer to run a Wire story that's reported because they have access to things. They can do that better than us. They have access that we don't have. They have resources that we don't have in that way. So that is part of our strategy, is like, okay, we can run these interviews with celebrities and actors and directors and stuff and use that as part of the mix of what we do in our section. And it's fine if someone else does those because you're not really interested in the writer. The writer shouldn't make that much difference because the writer is just a conduit. And now there are good writers and bad writers, and good writers have profiles and bad writers have profiles, and I'm not going to start splitting hairs about that. We try to run, you know, good stuff. But if I'm going to run Wire stuff, I prefer reported Wire stories rather than reviews. In fact, if we were going to, in a perfect world, all the reviews would be written by the same critic, whether it be me, or whether it would be Piers, or whether it would be Dan. But because we have a lot of reviews to write, the best way to do that is to split it up, is to, you know, Karen writes some, I write some, Sean Clancy writes occasionally, Courtney Lanning writes, you know. So we have all these voices, and you can, you know, have whatever sort of relationship you want with those voices. Like I said, I'd prefer to have one critic who wrote the movie reviews and maybe one who wrote the streaming reviews, which are still movies, but I still, in my head, feel a little different to me. And someone else who would write about, like, these prestige HBO miniseries or that. But, yeah, it's not a perfect world. We each have our strengths, our weaknesses, and we kind of decide from week to week what we're going to write about. The problem we run into these days of plague, is that there's so much that we could potentially write about because there's so much on these streaming services. And the opening dates seem to mean less and less to me, at least to me. I'm not somebody who automatically goes to Netflix the moment something drops to watch it. It's not like the opening weekend of a movie. It's just not. And so it's okay, I think, to come back and visit those like we did with Radioactive. Revisit those a week or maybe 2 weeks later, especially if we have, you know, an interesting thing to say about it. I'd rather have something interesting to say about it than just run some obligatory knee-jerk, you know, this is on, we like it, we don't like it, blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm more interested in producing quality stuff than I am following the conventions of, you know, movie reviewing. Like, get it in early, get it fast, all that. I'll leave that to the guys on Twitter, and, you know, they can do the instant stuff. We'll take our time with some of this stuff. Some of the stuff we'll do, like I said, I reviewed Summerlin. I watched it this morning, wrote the review, and by the time you see this, it'll be, you know, in theaters. So that's great. But at the same time, I'm not going to sweat the opening dates anymore. Maybe going forward, even when we get back to normal, we won't do that, because we're still going to have a lot of Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu and all that in our mix, because that's just the way we live now. That's reflective of our reality. What's not reflective of our reality are things that we still do, like the TV grid that shows you what comes on at 8 o'clock and what comes on at 9 o'clock, what comes on at 10, because by and large, people don't use that information anymore. They shift these things around. You know, there goes Audi. Bye, Audi. Have fun. See, she hung around a little. So, people don't use that anymore, I don't think. Some people probably do. And there's always a question of when is it appropriate for a newspaper to kind of give up a feature that's, and anytime you give up a feature, people are going to complain about it, because there are a certain number of people who either rely on that feature or believe they rely on that feature, or are just comforted by the fact that feature remains there. That's why it's so hard to get rid of a comic strip, you know, which objectively adds nothing of value to your life other than whatever humor you might find in the comic strip. But still, it's a huge thing to try to get rid of. Yeah, so people don't like change. But we've got to constantly change, because if we don't constantly change, then we get disrupted. You either grow or you die, and that's the true of everything. So what we're always trying to do is grow in these incremental ways and try to expand what we're doing and try to give you more and give ourselves more, because a lot of this is selfish. A lot of this is we want to write about these things because, you know, we're writers and it's an occasion to write and we get paid for it, okay? But the contract here is that we're going to try to do things for you too, so you'll pay attention to us and you'll read us, and that's the bargain. So we're always trying to push out in different ways and give you things that we think you might enjoy. If you've got any suggestions, we'd like to hear them. I ask for suggestions every week. I hardly ever get any, which I don't know. Maybe I should take that as we're doing a good job. Maybe you should take it as nobody's paying attention. I don't know. Of course, there'll be someone that says, of course, it's no one paying attention, which, you know, if you say that, you've been paying attention. So. Anyway, it's not a huge week for the film world right now, but it wouldn't be anyway. We'd be getting close to the doldrums, those dog days, horse latitudes of late summer, or late summer according to the movie calendar, where, you know, we would be getting like these kind of misshapen sort of weird movies anyway that nobody really thinks has much of a chance. And it wouldn't pick back up again until after the Toronto Film Festival, which is in September, mid-September, and I think this year is going virtual, but I don't know if we're going to get credentials for it. I know that our guy Piers will probably get credentials for it. You would think that, you know, if it all being virtual, it wouldn't be a big deal to give, you know, extra credentials out to the press, but I don't know that they're going to do that. We'll wait and see what's going to happen with Toronto. We're going to wait and see what happens with all these film festivals. Like I said, it seems like they would open up, because basically what they're giving you is access to this streaming product, and it's watermarked, and you can't really do anything with it without a lot of risk anyway. I mean, not that I would know how to, sell these things or put them on the internet or stuff like that. Maybe I could figure out how to put it on the internet. Maybe I could do that. I don't know. But, still. I don't know going forward how we're going to do this sort of stuff. I mean, Toronto's going to be interesting. Sundance will be very interesting. You know, South by Southwest was canceled this year, so I don't know what's going to happen next year. Cannes, all these things. I mean, but it's one thing, one lesson I'll take from it is that even though, more things are going online, that does not necessarily mean it's going to be made more accessible to, people like me, to people like us in tertiary markets like Little Rock. Because almost every studio now, instead of having screenings, sends links to their major motion pictures to critics. And there are still some nuts we have not been able to crack. I mean, Disney sent us, Disney Plus sent us a link to Hamilton, and I hope they appreciated our coverage of it. And some other places have, A24, IFC, Magnolia, Sony Pictures Classics. These guys have always been really good to us, but it's the biggies like Warner Brothers and Big Sony and things like that. They're very jealous of these things, even though they do have online, ways to view them. They're very limited in the people they allow access to them, which is interesting because sometimes I can't get access, but one of the guys that works for me can get access. So we continue to, do what we can. Fight this guerrilla war against the publicist. Yeah, that's my enemy, is the publicist. Except for the ones who really like us. But anyway, that's me complaining. That's generally what this video column usually is. It's usually me complaining and telling you things about movies that aren't opening here yet, like the James Bond, like Tenet, like Mulan. I'm sorry. These things are coming. They really are. If nothing else, they will eventually show up on a screen that you can watch. But for the time being, we've got Summerland, okay? And we'll see you at the movies, maybe, because we might be going to see The World's Greatest Showman, starring Hugh Jackman. Bye-bye for now.